to our ongoing series on Sri Vrindavan Dham and the Acharyas, our great Acharyas who live there. This will be our last lecture on the Acharyas in Vrindavan, and from here we'll continue discussing the different Leela Stams at the different places of Krishna's pastimes in Braj. Yes. So, Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pashtaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschata Deshatarane. Glories to Prabhupada. So, today I would like to speak about a devotee of the Lord who is famous for having composed 100,000 devotional songs about Lord Krishna in Vrindavan Dham. And that famous work is entitled Sur Sagar. It means an ocean of melody. Unfortunately, only, I think, 8,000 of those songs still exist. And this devotee's name is the illustrious Surdas. Surdas. Now, there's different versions, different depictions of his life. But I was directed by our GBC Shastrik committee to the works of one Usha Nielsen, who published a biography of Surdas's life in 1969. So I drew some things from that, and as well as information from some of the followers of Vallabhacharya. They shared with me some information about Surdas, because Surdas was a disciple of Sri Vallabhacharya of the Pushti Marg Sampradaya in Vrindavan. So I personally, because I first came in contact with Surdas some years ago, as I was searching online for famous devotee poets and musicians, and I was directed to our folio, ISKCON's folio. It's better known as the Bhaktivedanta Database. And there I discovered a prayer by Surdas in the Braj Bas language. It's entitled Charana Kamal. I found it to be very beautiful. Charana Kamal means the lotus feet. And Surdas begins, he says, Charana Kamal Bandon Hari Rai. It means I offer my prayers unto the lotus feet of the worshipable Lord Hari. Then he says, Jaki Kripa Pangu Giri Lange Ande Kon Shaba Kachu Dari Sai. He says, by his mercy, a lame person crosses mountains and a blind person sees everything. Then he goes, Bahira Shunhi Mukupuni Bholi Ronka Chale Shira Chata Darayi. A deaf person hears, and a dumb person again speaks. By his mercy, even a poor person may walk with a servant holding an umbrella over his head. That's particularly sweet. Then Surdas Swami Karuna Mai Bara Bara Bondan Tehi Pai. He says, the Lord of Surdas is full of compassion. Therefore, I offer my obeisances unto his lotus feet again and again. So I liked that particular song that he composed. And in that poem he says, Ande kon shabakachu darashai, that by the Lord's mercy, a blind person can see everything. And as I inquired further about this personality, I discovered that he's often described as a poet saint. Surdas, I discovered that he was speaking literally from experience, for he was actually born blind. He was born blind. And he was born in a village called Sihi. It's very near Agra, not far from Vrindavan, in the year of 1479. Some scholars say 1478, but not much difference. And he was born into a very poor Brahminical family. And it's said that as a child, he had this mystical ability to find lost items. As a little child, he could find whatever was lost. And once his father was given 2 gold coins for performing some Brahminical ritual, which it said some rats carried away at nighttime. And when his father was searching for them, Surdas, though being totally blind, somehow led his father to where they were. And I was reading, he was also, as this is a small child now, he was also able to predict the future with pinpoint accuracy. So again, we see, a great soul displays his greatness even in, as a child. Child prodigy, they say. But more important, or most important than those abilities, was his very clear inclination to hear about Krishna as a child. It's written that while other children were out playing, he simply wanted to stay home and listen to his mother recite Krishna's Vrindavan pastimes. And the real depth of his relationship with Krishna was revealed one day when he was, I think it was either 4 or 5. He fell into a deep well where he remained inside for like 6 days, couldn't get out, and they couldn't find him. But the whole time he remained very calm because he was just thinking and praying to Krishna. Then, miraculously, on the 7th day, it's described, Radha and Krishna appeared, and they rescued him from the well. Now remember, he's blind. So it's written that Srimati Radharani was standing very quietly by Krishna's side when Surdas, not knowing who she was, he desperately grabbed her ankles. And when she declared that, I am Srimati Radharani, I'm requesting you to please let go of my ankles, little boy. Surdas said, oh, but I'm blind and I cannot be sure of your identity, so I'm not going to let go. So seeing that Krishna smile, then he restored Surdas's eyesight, or you could say he gave him eyesight. And with those eyes, Surdas had darshan with Radha and Krishna. And after that, Krishna asked the little boy to request a boon. So little Surdas, he folded his hands and gazing on this beautiful form of Krishna, he said, quote, "My dear Lord, I prefer to remain blind, as I do not wish to see any other form than yours and your dearmost consort, Vrindavaneshwari, Srimati Radhika. Now that I have seen your form, I don't desire to see any other form." So actually he was blind the rest of his life. Unfortunately, as a result, or fortunately, he was ridiculed and even shamed by his peers, by the other children. So the acharyas say as a result, he developed this spirit of detachment from material life. And in a spirit of renunciation, he left home. He walked out of home at 6 years of age and became an ascetic. Again, he just walked out of the house, I've had enough of this. I just want to become an ascetic, dedicate my life to Krishna. He walked out of home. Now, it may be surprising to some people that a boy, of that age could leave home, and it's unheard of at such an age. But knowing a little bit about Vedic culture, Vedic history, we know it's not an isolated case. There's numerous examples, similar examples in Vedic history. We hear in Srimad Bhagavatam how Narada Muni left home at 5 years of age. We hear how Dhruva Maharaj left his mother and father and went to the forest to find God. He was 5. In more, quote, recent history, we know that Sripad Shankaracharya, when he was 5, one day he asked his mother if he could take sannyas. He's 5 years old. Mata, I want your permission to renounce this world altogether and take sannyas. So she was like, what? She was shocked. So she replied, yes, my son, you can take sannyas when you're on the verge of death. And that, in her mind, that meant, when you're old, when you're getting old and death is approaching, then you can take sannyas. So this intelligent boy, Shankaracharya, he ran into the nearby Kaveri River, which was full of crocodiles. And he jumped in and he started swimming to where the crocodiles were. They're all floating there. And when these crocodiles saw the boy, they started, swimming towards him with their mouths wide open. And all the while his mother's, terrified watching this from the shore of the bank of the river Kaveri. So the crocodiles are coming, so Shankaracharya, he looks towards the shore and he calls out, Mata, I'm now on the verge of death. May I take sannyas? Meaning, can I renounce this cruel world? So a startled mother, she had no other choice but to call out with tears in her eyes, yes, my dear son, you can take sannyas, you can renounce this world. So with that, Shankaracharya, who was described as a good swimmer, he outswam the ferocious crocodiles. He came back to shore, and he picked up some torn cloth on the riverbank, some saffron cloth, and he put that on, and he picked up a stick to use as the sign of a sannyasi, a danda. And in bare feet, he walked out of the village as a renunciate. And the rest is history. Sripad Shankaracharya. So our hero today, Surdas, he showed a similar desire. And of course, we think it's really unusual, that these children have this. Usually you get this desire after experiencing the material world for 50 or 60, 70 years. A man will become renounced and take sannyas. But Surdas, at 6 years, he left home in the pursuit of God. And where did the poor boy go? Well, he went straight to the banks of the Jamuna, because the village near Agra is not far from Vrindavan. He went straight to Vrindavan on the banks of the Jamuna, and he became enriched with the mercy of Sri Vrindavan Dham. We said, where did the poor boy go? Well, he became enriched. Entering into the Dham of Vrindavan and sitting on the banks of the Jamuna River to pursue Krishna. It's a good place to be, on the banks of the Jamuna. There's that beautiful prayer in Brihat Bhagavatamritam 116. All glories to Sri Jamuna, the daughter of the sun god and sister of Yamaraj. She is the beloved of Krishna, the killer of Mura, and has exceeded the greatness of Ganga Devi in her friendship with him. Having made intimate friendship with Mathura Devi, she always embraces her, and disguised as ordinary water, her waves flow with the honey of the pastimes of Krishna. Yamunamai ki. So there in Vrindavan, he gradually became a very accomplished poet, musician, and composer of devotional songs. And this is incredible because he's totally blind. He's just a child. But he became a very accomplished poet, expert musician, and he composed many beautiful devotional songs. And in time, he also became very expert in playing a number of musical instruments. And when he grew into a teenager, he was selected to be the chief singer at the famous Gopal temple out at Govardhan. We remember how Madhavendra Puri originally found the Gopal deity at Govardhan, and he established his worship there. The deity remained at Govardhan for some time. And so he was asked to be the main singer. He would just sit there and he would sing for Gopal all day. And once the head pujari of that temple, curious as to how Surdas was always, in his poems and his songs, was always describing the beauty of the Gopal deity so nicely. He would write about the deity, how the deity looked, how he was dressed, well, what was the deity's mood. He somehow in his heart he knew all these things. So the head pujari was curious, like how does he know all that? He's blind. So he wanted to test Surdas. So that day the pujari, he dressed this very beautiful deity. Later that deity became known as Srinathji, and he's now being worshipped in Nathdwar. But that day he dressed the deity only in a single strand of pearls. No cloth, no turban, no other jewels. Just the deity just had one strand of pearls. That's how he dressed him. Now when the curtain opened, the pujari said, "So, dear Surdas, please tell us how Gopal looks today." So everyone's attention turned to this teenage boy. So what does he look like then? So Surdas, he just burst out laughing on, quote, seeing Gopal with his transcendental vision, bereft of clothing, and he started singing. He sang a song. Now, when we translate these songs, especially from the Braj Bhasa language, can't capture everything. But the song that he sang is as follows, quote, "See Lord Hari is stark naked. He looks beautiful in every limb. Clothed in pearls, his nakedness adds to the beauty of every limb. Surdas joins the milkmaids of Braj in joyous laughter." Unquote. Wow. So after this incident, everyone was convinced of Surdas, his unique ability to see his beloved Lord, despite the fact that he was blind. Now his fame in writing and composing so many beautiful songs about Radha and Krishna and the gopis and the cowherd boys and the different rasas and mellows of love for Krishna in Vrindavan and the, Chintamani dust and Giriraj Govardhan and Radhakund and Shamakund. He was the way he would write, would just bring forth deep emotions from everyone's hearts. So everyone loved him. And his fame spread very rapidly. He's just this little sadhu sitting in the dust in Vrindavan with his musical instruments. He can't go here and there because he's blind, so he's just sitting. But he's performing the most amazing devotional service. So his fame spread. And the legendary musician, we mentioned him in a previous lecture, Tansen. Tansen was a very famous musician. He was the chief musician in the court of the great emperor Akbar. Remember, we've spoken about Akbar. Akbar was a Muslim emperor, but he was very broad-minded, and he was interested in other spiritual traditions as well. And he would inquire from the saints and the sages in different spiritual traditions. We know how he had contact with the saints in Vrindavan, the Goswamis in Vrindavan. So he helped develop Vrindavan in various ways as well, very open-minded. So he was ruling from Delhi. Now Delhi, we know, is not that far from Sri Vrindavan Dham. So one day his chief musician, Tansen, sang a very beautiful song about Krishna. It was one of Surdas' songs. So when Akbar heard this song, he started crying. So then he turned to this musician, Tansen, and he said, that's a beautiful song you wrote about God. But Tansen, he humbly said, I have not composed this song or the musical accompaniment, but there's a great devotee, young devotee, but a great devotee living in Vrindavan at Govardhan Hill. His name is Surdas. So Akbar, he requested Tansen, you go to Vrindavan and you bring this Surdas back to my palace here in Delhi. I want him to sing for me. So when Surdas arrived, Akbar, he's a king, he's an emperor. He's very pious and has devotional inclinations, but he's king, so he said to Surdas, you please compose a song about my exploits as emperor. But Surdas refused. And when Akbar asked, why are you refusing? Surdas replied famously, Sir, I've given my heart to Krishna, and there's no room inside for anyone else. And they're fully surrendered. I've given my heart to Krishna, there's no room for anyone else. Well, I only sing about Krishna. And then he just spontaneously broke out with a song, like he did earlier at Govardhan Hill about Gopal, in front of the king. His song goes, I know no one other than my cowherd protecting Gopal. How can I throw away this priceless diamond to collect glass beads instead? If you have a tiny drop of immortalizing amrita, a mountain of poison can have no effect. To my heart, my words, and to my body, no one else is as attractive, for my shime has brought me enormous riches. For my Lord, I have given up everything, even my caste, so says Surdas. So of course he was singing this in that Brajbas language, which, it'd be nice just to learn that language to be able to hear sing this song in its original composition. So when he finished singing, how he'd just given his heart to Krishna, and so he can only sing about Krishna, Akbar was standing there speechless, and I read tears were flowing down his cheeks. And only Tansen, that musician, the court musician, only he was able to say something, only he could speak. And he said famously, Kindown sur ko sar lagyo, Kindown sur ki pir, Kindown sur ko pada lagyo, Benjam shako sharir. Listen to this, quote, some are hurt by a warrior's arrow. Some are tortured by pain, but those whose hearts are touched by Surdas's lyrics are pierced through again and yet again. Wow. Some are hurt by a warrior's arrow. Some are tortured by pain, but those whose hearts are touched by Surdas's lyrics are pierced through again and yet again. The heart is pierced by these loving sentiments expressed by Surdas for Krishna in Braj. Now, many of Surdas's songs, again, were in the Brajbas, the language of Vrindavan, Braj, which very much endeared him to the people of Vrindavan. And with his poetic genius and his musical skills and his pure heart, he knew how to churn their hearts. He sang only for Krishna, only of Krishna, and of Krishna's devotees, of course. He wasn't like other sadhus of the time who would speak, who would speak and sing of the formless supreme, the Brahman. He wasn't like them. They were always speaking the Brahman, the formless Brahman, to enter into, to become God. He wasn't like that. He made that very clear. He wasn't like them. In my research, because I just went deeper and deeper and deeper because I was so interested in this personality. I spent hours reading those 100,000 songs. It was so enlivening. In my research, I came across one song to that effect, that he wasn't interested in describing the Brahman, which spiritual divine energy which emanates from the body of the Lord, which the impersonalists want to merge into. No. He wrote as follows, quote, "My mind runs in circles, bewildered, finding nothing to grasp, no support, in the formless, who they say is faceless, with no attributes, no lines, no characteristics. They consider it in every way inaccessible. So Surdas has decided to sing of the beautiful Lord incarnate, Sri Hari, and all his attractive pastimes." You can feel it piercing your heart. Now Surdas himself was, of course, very aware of the Vrindavan Leelas. Vrindavan, the playground of God. And the deep loving relationships that Krishna has, different rasas, with different devotees in Vrindavan. And he loved to sing of the gopis' pastimes with Krishna. And a number of his songs actually are focused on this vipralamba bhav, or the mood of separation, love and separation with Krishna. I found a number of songs like that. Here's one. Please listen to this. This is the gopis. The gopis are singing as after Krishna leaves Vrindavan with Balaram in Akrura's chariot from Mathura. This is how he's showing us how the gopis are feeling. It's a really beautiful poem. Gopis are singing. "No one has ever become happy loving. The moth loved the fire, but the fire consumed her. No one has ever become happy loving. The bee loved the lotus, but the flower became its prison. No one has ever become happy loving. The deer, drawn by the sweet sound of the hunter, had to bear an arrow in her heart. No one has ever become happy loving. We, who loved the honeyed one, were struck dumb when he left us. O Surdas, without our Lord we suffer. Our tears are always flowing, for no one has ever become happy loving. We who loved the honeyed one, Krishna is described as the honeyed one, we were struck dumb when he left us. O Surdas, without our Lord we suffer. Our tears are always flowing, for no one has ever become happy loving. It's very deep. This is Vipralamba Bhav. I really love that. I mean, that for me, that really made, this Vipralamba Bhav much more clear. And I have such a deeper appreciation now for the milkmaids of Braja, So in Vrindavan, our very beloved Surdas spent much of his time near Giriraj Govardhan. Where at Govardhan did he stay? He stayed on the banks of the sacred Chandra Sarovara lake. Chandra Sarovara lake. As we know, there's many, many lakes. Some 50-odd lakes it's described, around principal lakes around Govardhan Hill. Of course, in time, they've disappeared from our external vision. But one of those lakes is called Chandra Sarovara. Now, Chandra Sarovara Lake is to the followers of Balabhacharya what Radhakund Lake is to the followers of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Eventually, Chandra Sarovara is where this great poet, saint, Surdas left this world. He left this world in the year 1581. And his samadhi is there at Chandra Sarovara because that's where he spent so much time. Now I was reading that, his final words, that the final words that he uttered on his deathbed are so inspiring. As he was laying there on the banks of Chandra Sarovara on his deathbed, the son of Balabhacharya, his name was Vitala. He was present. Many devotees were present. But Vitala asked Surdas, what are you thinking about now? And as a way of replying, Surdas composed what would be his last song. It's so interesting how he would, always respond with a song. It reminded me of Braj, because in Vrindavan, every step's a dance. Every word is a song. There's a festival every day, and the flute is the constant companion. So it seems very appropriate. Surdas, such an elevated devotee. When we asked this question, what are you thinking about? He immediately composed what would be his last song. And he sang, quote, Krishna's beautiful eyes are like the Kunjana birds, full of rasa, very restless, and slightly reddened due to intoxication. Seeing this, my life cannot remain in the cage of this body any longer. And as he said longer, he gave up his body. And he went back home, back to Godhead. So beautiful. Let me recite it again. Krishna's beautiful eyes are like Kunjana birds, full of rasa, very restless, and slightly reddened due to intoxication. Seeing this, my life cannot remain in the cage of this body any longer. It's just describing Krishna's eyes in such poetic. Yam yam vapi smaram bhavan. Whatever one thinks about at the moment of death, that state they will attain. We go to where our heart takes us. So we left. And from that day, devotees go to Chandra Sarovara, to his samadhi, and the acharyas say they pray. And what do devotees pray for? They pray for, quote, his inner vision by which he could see Radha and Krishna's eternal pastimes. We want to have that same internal vision. What do these eyes see? They see this mundane material world with all its faults. But we want to see Krishna. We want to awaken our spiritual senses. And with those eyes, see what is really worthy of seeing. The form of the Lord and his associates. So we should also go. On our next Kartik Parikrama, we should go to Govardhan Hill, and we should go to Chandra Sarovara, and we should go to that samadhi. I've been there several times, and we should pray. We should sit next to Surdas' samadhi and reflect on his songs and his pastimes, and we should bathe in that very, very sacred kund on whose banks he departed. And it's a very, very sacred kund. Actually, any and all the lakes in Vrindavan are completely pure, sacred, and extremely merciful. I was reading that Shastra describes that some lakes, like Govinda Kund, are filled with Krishna's bath water. Other lakes, like Shamakund, are filled with water from all the holy places. And other lakes like Navalkund are filled with the liquid form of Radha and Krishna's love. They're very special, these lakes. If you bathe in Radhakund, you get the same love that Radha has for Krishna. And if you bathe in Shamakund, you get the same love that Sham, Krishna, has for Radha. These are not ordinary waters. Liquid prem, liquid love. And I was further reading that during the month of Kartik, all the holy bodies of water in the universe, they take shelter in Sri Vrindavan Dham. So next Kartik or next Kartik, we don't know how things will go, but we should bathe. And if not, we can do manasa. We can bathe in our minds from a distance. If we can't live in Vrindavan, we should constantly remember Vrindavan. And by all these lectures we've been giving, we're hoping to give you pastimes and personalities and places of Vrindavan to think about. Because the mind is always thinking about so many mundane things, but when time allows, you can remember all this wonderful Braj Leela. Now regarding Chandra Sarovara, I found a very beautiful reference because I thought, well, this is connected to Surdas, so we can speak a little bit about that which was dear to him, Chandra Sarovara. So I found a beautiful verse in Garga Samhita, 3rd canto, chapter 8. Netre vai manasiganga nasa chanda Sarovara Govinda kundon yadharas chibukam Krishna kundaka. Chibukam Krishna kundaka. Quote, Manasaganga is Govardhan Hill's eyes. Chandra Sarovara is his nose. Govinda Kund, his lips, and Shamakund, his chin. It's describing, Govardhan Hill. So Manasaganga's Govardhan Hill's eyes. Chandra Sarovara is Govardhan Hill's nose. Govinda Kund, Govardhan Hill's lips, and Shamakund, Govardhan Hill's chin. And getting back into Vrindavan now. There's a natural flow. So therein we hear that Chandra Sarovara is the nose of Govardhan Hill. In other words, Chandra Sarovara forms a part of Govardhan Hill. Now, most devotees, I think most of you have not been to Chandra Sarovara. We're doing, our Govardhan Parikrama. I didn't see Chandra Sarovara. Well, that's because it's situated on what is known as the outer Parikrama Marg around Govardhan Hill. We go in the inner, we're very close to Giriraj, isn't it, when we do our 4 or 5, 6 hour Parikrama. But this is further out. It's another ring, but farther out. It's called the outer Parikrama Marg. It's longer. It's let me remember. It's like 41 or 42 kilometers. It's further out, so it's longer. And this was actually the the Parikrama Marg, Parikrama path, that Srila Sanatana Goswami would take when he did his Govardhan Parikramas. Why would he take this longer one further out? Because he chose that path because he wanted to avoid stepping on any Govardhan Shila on the path that we as modern day Vaishnavas always take. When we're going on Parikrama, there's parts, especially down near the southern part of the tip of Giriraj down there. You take that little inside path. You're very close. There's Shilas there. Sometimes they just pop their little heads up in the rut, and inadvertently we may step on them. He didn't want to do that, so he always took the long outer mark. So on that outer perimeter, that's where you find this kund, situated a little still, part of Giriraj, according to Shastra, according to the Garga Samhita, a little bit further out. So That's where Chanda Sarovar is. It's on that. So when you go, then please ask the locals, where's the outer ring, the outer Pergama mark? There's actually like a road that goes most of that now. But you can also walk that area. And there you'll find this beautiful kund, this beautiful lake, Chandra Sarovara. And I was going deeper and deeper. It's like you take an onion and you peel off the first skin, then you can peel off the second. An onion's like that. It's composed of many skins. So you can go deeper and deeper and deeper into these, into our beloved Vrindavan Dham. So there's a number of pastimes that took place, or you could say are eternally taking place at Chanda Sarovara. Perhaps most notably is it's where Krishna once performed his Springtime Rasalillah. We read in Krishna book about the Rasalillah dance, you could say the Maha Rasalillah dance. But there's, as I've said many times, it's a pastime Krishna performs every day. And so there's different Rasalillas around Vrindavan, and some of the major ones are in different seasons. There's the autumn Rasalillah, and then there's the springtime Rasalillah. So the springtime Rasalillah, it takes place at Chandra Sarovara. Of course, originally at that time, when Krishna performed this springtime Rasalila 5,000 years ago, it was just a forested area. You could say there was no lake, no kund, no Chanda Sarovara. But listen to how it manifests, this lake. So this was a very special Rasalila dance. Actually, I was reading, just to get into some more detail, it was only for the eternal residents, the Nitya Siddhas of Vrindavan, because, for the gopis, the Nitya Siddha gopis, the gopis that came from Goloka Vrindavan to Krishna, with Krishna to Bhoma Vrindavan here in the material world. Because there's different groups of gopis. Some gopis come from the class of the daughters of the demigods. Some gopis came through the process of sadhan bhakti, practicing Krishna consciousness. Some gopis were sages during the time of Ramachandra, who wanted a intimate loving relationship with Ram, but because they were sages, it wasn't possible. So Ram gave them the benediction. They could become gopis. When he appeared as Krishna in Vrindavan, there's different classifications of gopis. So this springtime Rasalila was specifically for the Nitya Siddha, the eternal gopis. Just one of Purnamasi's arrangements. So this special Rasalila, it lasted an entire night of Brahma. Yeah, Krishna went with the gopis there in that area, near to Govardhan Hill, in that forested area. And that Rasalila was attended by all the demigods from the higher planets. How did they attend? Well, they hovered above the Rasa dance in their flower airplanes. I think there's a famous painting like that in the Krishna book, or you'll see at different places, Krishna's Rasalila is going on, and in the sky you see the Devotees and their wives and their various airplanes, and they're observing. So Acharyas have given extra attention to that particular rasa dance. I was reading that the Acharyas write that, quote, "The demigods filled the sky with showers of flowers, and the sound of their kettle drums reverberated throughout Greater Vrindavan as the rasa dance commenced." And from their perspective in the sky, they saw the rasa dance in a particular way. It's also very beautiful. It's written, the rasa dance appeared to them like a brilliant sapphire set in the middle of a gold band, and at other times the sapphire and gold bands intertwined. At other times the rasa dance resembled, quote, "an exquisite sapphire paired with a flashing diamond, both fixed at the center of a band, appearing like solid gold." And other times it appeared like a sapphire and gold. Anyway, You can imagine there's Krishna, and there's the gopis, and they're all beautifully dressed, and their movements, it's very colorful. So this is a poetic way of describing how it looked from the perspective of the demigods. And it's written that the demigods who were fortunate enough to see this rasa dance stared in wonder at the incredible ways the gopis moved their feet and hands while flashing eyebrows and playful smiles at the Lord. So some insight into that special springtime rasa dance in that particular forest near Govardhan Hill. And I was also reading that just as Krishna appeared more beautiful in the gopis' presence, they also appeared more beautiful in his presence. And Rupa Goswami specifically, he says that, quote, "As the dancing reached a climax, Krishna enjoyed the pleasure of the gopis' company by embracing them, caressing them, and glancing lovingly at them as he displayed his broad, playful smiles." Rupa Goswami's description of the springtime rasa dance. Now, the acharyas say that amongst all those demigods watching from above, the one who was most touched, the most affected, the most overwhelmed, was the demigod of the moon, Chandradev. He was especially happy because he got to serve the rasa dance by hovering as the moon planet, giving light and illumination for the whole extended performance. He was happy because he got to serve the Rasalila dance by hovering as the moon planet, giving light and illumination for the whole extended performance. Now remember, what does it mean, extended performance? A night of Brahma. So he felt he got some special mercy. In that research, I came across, he has devotees also. He's a demigod. There's demigod worshippers. So, but I found a nice prayer that the devotees of the moon, they offer to Chandra. It's worth saying because, of course, he's a devotee of Krishna, and he was rendering service to the Rasalila. So it's nice to hear how his devotees appreciate him. Here's a wonderful prayer that the worshippers of the moon planet worship Chandra. Quote, "Our Lord Chandra is of white complexion, wears white-colored clothes, and is adorned with white-colored ornaments. May that merciful Lord illuminate my intelligence and breathe confidence into my heart." Wow. Of course, they're worshiping a demigod, but he's a devotee, so we like to hear him glorified. "Our Lord Chandra is of white complexion, wears white-colored clothes, and is adorned with white-colored ornaments. May that merciful Lord illuminate my intelligence and breathe confidence into my heart." Hare Krishna. So Chandradev, he hung in the sky for one night of Brahma. That's a long time for the moon to be shining in the sky. And the effect of witnessing the Rasalila for so long, the Rasalila is the quintessence of all of Sri Krishna's pastimes, the effect of that caused him to experience the topmost ecstatic symptoms of prema. What are those 8 ecstatic symptoms? Because the topmost ecstatic symptoms, they're actually 8 in number. So what was he experiencing? Again, we've discussed this a little bit before. What are the 8 symptoms of love of God? They're described in Nectar of Devotion, chapter 28. So what are they? Quote, "There are 8 symptoms of existential ecstatic love: becoming stunned, perspiring, standing of the hairs on the body, faltering of the voice, trembling of the body, changing of bodily colors, and shedding tears, as well as devastation." So one symptom there mentioned is the shedding of tears. So it just so happened that, as Chandradev was watching this Rasalila dance, he started experiencing some ecstatic symptoms One of which was he started crying and crying and crying. The tears were coming from his eyes down his face like torrents of tears, like, and they came down and they formed a kund. They formed a lake, a sarovara, Chandra Sarovara. From that point on, those ecstatic tears of the moon god, they are Chandra Sarovara. It's called the Lake of the Moon God. Now Rupa Goswami, he gives special significance to Chandra Sarovara by saying that each day, Radha and Krishna and their friends, they visit Chandra Sarovara after their pastimes at Radha Kund. There you go. Some inside information. Radha and Krishna, Radha and Krishna meet at noontime at Radha Kund. And they're there with their friends and their associates and servants. And what do they do afterwards? They go to Chandra Sarovara and they have their pastimes there. Whew. So such a divine Leelastan, meaning holy place, such a divine Leelastan must be given the highest respect and devotion. How much? Well, Srila Raghunath Das Goswami shows us actually how much reverence and love he has for the Leelastans, the places of Radha and Krishna's pastimes in Braj, places like Chandra Sarovara. He writes famously, quote, their hearts pleased by the rising waves of the conjugal mellow, Madhurya Ras. The youthful divine couple enjoys pastimes in the beautiful groves of Vrindavan, aromatic with the many pleasant flowers and filled with many humming bees. Let us sweep these forest groves with our long hair. That's deep. Their hearts pleased by the rising waves of the conjugal mellow, Madhurya Ras. The youthful divine couple enjoys pastimes in the beautiful groves of Vrindavan, aromatic with the many pleasant flowers and filled with many humming bees. Let us sweep these forest groves with our long hair. Hare Krishna. Raghunath Das Goswami ki. Now, the gopis, they have a special pastime when they're there in late afternoon with Radha and Krishna at Chandra Sarovara, which they really enjoy. It's called, quote, honey drinking, unquote. This honey is collected from the trees of Braj, and it's mixed with different substances like yogurt, milk, different types of scented powders, etc. And then the girls, they're together, they have their times together, they sit on the banks of Chandra Sarovara. And it's described slightly intoxicated with this honey beverage. They laugh and they giggle, as young girls do, but the source of their joy is always the young son of Nanda Maharaj. I thought that was cute. They laugh and they giggle as young girls do, but the source of their joy is always the young son of Nanda Maharaj, Krishna. Now, the shape of that sacred lake from the ecstatic tears of the moon god is shaped in a octagonal 8 size. And on the western side of that lake is a resting place of Radha and Krishna. It's called Sringara Mandira. Sringara Mandira. When I read that, I thought, that's a beautiful name for some devotee. Sringara Mandira. And on the eastern side of that 8-sided lake is a small temple housing the deities of Radha Chandra Bihari. You can go and see them. Now, there's one last pastime connected to Chandra Sarovar I'd like to share with you, we may have even mentioned it before some months ago, but svadhu, svadhu, pade, pade. We just want to keep hearing these pastimes over and over again. And it's a pastime involving our beloved Lord Balaram. One time Lord Balaram was on top of Govardhan Hill, scanning the horizon, it said. And, he's at the top of Govardhan Hill and he's looking out at Braj, when he noticed some movement at Chanda Sarovara, because of course Chanda Sarovara is intimately connected to Govardhan Hill. And in order to get a better view, he crouched down to peer beneath the branches of some trees, just so he could see what's that movement out there at Chanda Sarovara. And there he saw his younger brother, Krishna, dancing Rasalillah with the gopis on the shores of Chanda Sarovara. Obviously, the pastime happens there again and again, his Rasalillah, Krishna's Rasalillah. So now Balaram, he very rarely witnesses his brother's rasa dances. They both have their set of gopis, but they don't mix the different moods. So he just rarely gets to see Krishna's Rasalillah. So he wasn't about to pass up this opportunity to see this one. So he was like, he became very focused and he gazed intensely at Krishna's movements. It's described with so much fascination that his complexion gradually turned from the color of an autumn white cloud to rain cloud black. Balaram became bluish black like a monsoon cloud. And then he was looking even closer, inspecting even closer. And he noticed something really unusual about this rasa dance, that each and every gopi looked exactly the same in appearance and dress. It didn't appear there were many different gopis. It looked like they all looked the same. So he blinked his eyes, it's described, he blinked his eyes, and he looked again, and what did he see? He saw that Krishna was not expanding himself to dance, with many gopis simultaneously, as is usual in the rasa dance. But Radha and Krishna were both expanding themselves many, many times to dance together, alone in the rasa dance. In other words, instead of Krishna and one gopi, then Krishna and a different gopi, then Krishna and a different gopi, what he saw was Radha Krishna, Radha Krishna, Radha Krishna, Radha Krishna, in a large circle. The same divine couple, forming a large circle of the rasa dance. It wasn't different gopis. It was the same Krishna and the same Radha. Very special rasa lila. Radha Krishna, next Radha Krishna, all holding hands. I was reading the Acharyas say that this rasa dance is rarely heard of. Apparently we're getting the opportunity to hear it now. It's rarely heard of and even more rarely seen. Then something really amazing happened. Astonished by what he saw, Balaram leaned forward to get a better look. Another intense gaze. And as he did so, his crown toppled off his head and rolled forcefully down Govardhan Hill, gaining speed until boom, at the bottom of the hill it hit a large stone. It hit a large Govardhan Shila. And it said that, quote, Balaram's ecstasy was transmitted to his crown, which upon striking the stone caused it to melt, leaving behind the impression of his crown, a memorial to Dauji's spying ways. Dauji is another name for Balaram. It means that he's Krishna's older brother, Dauji, Krishna's older brother. So, Balaram's ecstasy was transmitted to his crown, which upon striking the stone caused it to melt, leaving behind the impression of a crown, a memorial to Dauji's spying ways. So when you do, many of you know, when you do Govardhan Parikrama, it's a little bit, where is that? I think that's before Govinda Kund. Or maybe, I can't remember. I have to go on Govardhan Parikrama again. But as you're doing Govardhan Parikrama, you'll, actually it's before Govinda Kund. you'll come across this little spot, and they have a pujari there all the time, and he's often doing puja, and you'll see this big Shila, and you go and you'll see Balaram's crown imprinted there. You can give a small donation. So the acharyas conclude that, quote, "The privilege of seeing this unique dance made this mountain lookout a favorite place of Lord Balaram, who would often revisit it sometimes just to remember this Leela or this pastime." Even Balaram goes there, remembering this pastime. He got to see this special rasa dance, and then this crown fell off, and there's that Sheela. So that's a quote, Wow. And so, dear Prabhus, we find ourselves now very much back in Sri Vrindavan Dham. After having taken a blissful transcendental diversion for some month, discussing the lives of various great devotees who lived or spent time in this divine abode of Vrindavan, we're concluding that transcendental diversion today with this lecture on this great devotee, this poet saint, Surdas. So, you could say that our series on Vrindavan Vaishnavacharyas is now complete. And we will continue for the next 2 weeks to wander as we did before for most of the year through the 12 forests of Vrindavan. And then we will eventually go to Goldurum, we'll go to Navadvip, Mayapur Dham, we'll go to where the Ganges flows, and we'll hear the appearance and the pastimes of the Yuga Avatar, Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his transcendental associates, and we'll go deep into that treasure chest and pull out many valuable jewels and hear them together, become purified, and awaken our love for Gauranga. So it was wonderful speaking about all those Vaishnavacharyas. I'll never forget. But now, we're back in Braj, back in the 12 forests. All glories to this place where we are living. Lord Murari's Vrindavan forest. He prefers residing here to residing in Vaikuntha or even in the hearts of elevated saints. In Vrindavan, while always tending his cows, he gives pleasure to the gopis, whose love for him in the mood of the rasa dance he increases by always sweetly playing his flute. Brihad Bhagavatamritam 115. Oh, how pious are the tracts of land in Braj, for there the Parama Purusha, Sri Krishna, who is worshipped by Shiva and Lakshmi, wanders disguised as a human being, adorned with an astonishing multicolored garland of flowers. He tends the cows accompanied by Baladev and his Sakhis, vibrating his sweet flute and absorbed in various kinds of blissful pastimes. Srimad Bhagavatam 10:44-13. Isn't it good to be home again? It's good to be home again. Shri Vrindavan mama pavanam tvam eva. Shri Vrindavan mama jivanam tvam eva. Shri Vrindavan mama bhushanam tvam eva. Shri Vrindavan mama sad yashash tvam eva. O Shri Vrindavan, O Radhika's abode, you are my purity, you are my life and soul, you are my ornament, and you are my eternal fame. That's from Vrindavan Mahimamrita by Srila Prabodhananda Saraswati. And with his words on the tip of our tongue and in your hearts, we conclude today's lecture on this great saint, Surdas, having heard all his wonderful poetry about Vrindavan and his songs about Vrindavan, and now we're there and we'll be here for a couple more weeks speaking about the glories of this wonderful Dham. So it's a milestone now in this one-year series of lectures, and we look forward to the future. There's always a wonderful future in Krishna consciousness. Thank you, Prabhu, again for this wonderful service. We will see you in a few days. Shri Shri Gauranitai ki, Shri Shri Krishna Balaram ki, Shri Shri Radha Shama Sundar ki, Vrindavaneshwari Shrimati Radharani ki, Surdas ki, Shri Prabhupada, the revealer of the Dhamma ki, Gauda Premanandi, Jai Jai Sisi Radhe Sham. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna. All glories to Prabhupada. All right, well.